New on Blu-ray from Deaf Crocodile, making, I think, this the legitimate US home video debut. I think from 1970 is Toomorrow, spelled T-O-O, Morrow. This is a Region A Blu-ray, so it's playable only in North America, directed by Val Guest, who did a lot of Hammer movies, a lot of British director, did a lot of British stuff in the 60s, 70s, and earlier, actually, and known for he directing 1/5, basically, of Casino Royale, with Olivia Newton-John, Margaret, Nolan, Benny Thomas, Karl Chambers, Vic Cooper, and Richard Eng in a small role. If you know Richard Eng, he is a Hong Kong actor who went to school in the UK and shows up in various UK productions before he became a really well-known comedic star in Hong Kong. So the idea behind this movie is actually far more interesting than the movie itself. This was the idea of producer Harry Saltzman, who was with Albert Broccoli, Cubby Broccoli, the producing team who gave us the James Bond films in the 60s and beyond. Saltzman eventually split with Broccoli, but I think they were still together at this time. And Don Kirshner, who was the musical supervisor for the Monkees and helped with the music on the Archies, and knew a thing or two about bands that were created for a project and getting hit songs into their pipeline. So this was post-Monkees. Kirshner had been fired from the Monkees project in 1967, and I'm a huge Monkees fan, so that's going to keep coming up, just so you know. And they decided, we're going to create a band. This did really well in the US for the Monkees. Let's go to the UK and we're going to put a band together. We're going to cast a band. They all actually can play and sing. We're going to put them in a flat in London. We're going to get them a 3-picture deal with J. Arthur Rank Organization. We're going to get them an RCA Records contract, and we're going to release a feature film to announce them to the world. And they're going to be making movies and doing live shows and cutting records, and it's just going to make us a tremendous amount of money. Or so they thought. Then came the film that I'm about to talk about, Toomorrow. So I've heard about this movie forever, and recently, I've never picked up a Deaf Crocodile disc until now. I've always wanted to. I'm really impressed with the stuff they put out, but it's just a matter of, I get so many review discs, literally all those I still haven't watched yet. I get so many review discs that I don't buy a lot because the pipeline of things to watch for me is never ending. So, but this is what I really wanted to see, and I don't get review discs from Deaf Crocodile, although Deaf Crocodile, if you'd like to send review discs. So I bought this because I love the kind of thing, and I saw what all the extras were on this thing. So the basic story is that aliens are out in space looking down on the Earth, and their alien race is dying, or it's bereft of joy, and they have sensed a harmonical tone coming from the UK, specifically from this little mini Moog kind of thing that the keyboardist in Toomorrow has, and this tone is a source of joy for them. So they want to get this band to come to their world and perform their music and spread joy throughout the galaxy, or at least throughout their race, wherever it might be in the galaxy. So it's a very silly idea. You've got a UK band and you've got aliens, which, you kind of hooked me with the aliens. And the aliens are really interesting. It's played pretty straight. The aliens are really interesting, and the effects for the film were done by a guy who worked in the Bond films, and the look of the spaceship and the interior of it is very interesting. The method they use to get people to and from Earth, beaming them up, it looks pretty cheap, but I think this movie had financial issues that I learned throughout the extras, and very good extras in this, by the way. It's an excellent commentary by Andrew Sandoval, who's a music historian. He's predominantly known for his work with the Monkees and the Kinks, and he knows all about this era of music and all about Don Kirshner and what he did with the Monkees. So he weaves a lot of that into the commentary on this. So, score by Hugo Montenegro, who's no slouch. Apparently, originally they wanted John Barry to do the score through his Bond connections, but he wasn't available or didn't want to do it. And this also features tech-wise optional English SDH subtitles. So the basic story is that there is this British singing group called Toomorrow. It's T-O-O Morrow, as in they're too much. And it's an African-American, a Caucasian-American males, a Caucasian British man, and Olivia Newton-John, an Aussie, as it were. Although apparently she was born in England, but grew up in Australia. So they're this young band in college, and it is the type of college and university where there's a student unrest, and they're going to do a sit-in in the administration building and all this kind of stuff. So this band is torn between their activism at the time and trying to get a paying gig so that they can, get on their way to fame and fortune as the band Toomorrow. So there is music throughout this. There are scenes of them performing, sometimes fantastical, sometimes not. It does have the occasional monkeys-like romp or fantasy sequence, more like a fantasy sequence intercut between performances. And then you have the alien who is in human form trying to recruit them. You have another alien in female human form in the form of Margaret Nolan, who you might know as Dink, an unfortunate name now. Dink in Goldfinger and many other things. British pinup actress. And it's not very good, unfortunately. I really wanted to like this. The transfer is phenomenal. It looks and sounds so good. But the problem is you've got a band that, aside from Olivia Newton-John, is not very dynamic in terms of being performers. They were I think it was kind of like the Monkees. You had two people who were predominantly musicians and two people who were predominantly actors, but who could also be musical and sing. And it's them singing and everything, but the music they're given is not memorable. It wasn't to me. Like at the end of the movie, I couldn't really remember any of the songs other than the one that loops on the Blu-ray menu while I was figuring out what I was going to do with it. The performances by the band members, again, aside from Olivia Newton-John and maybe the one band member who's sort of a Lothario, are not that dynamic. The story just kind of sits there. I said, we started this up and I said, this movie has me from the get-go with the aliens thing and the look and the music and the title design and all that. I'm like, this is going to have to try to fail. And unfortunately for me, it did, because like a lot of British cinema of this era, it has a really fun idea or a fun marketing campaign, and then it's ultimately just people standing around talking, which can be great, but for a movie like this, it needs more energy. And Andrew Sandoval in the commentary kept saying that this really would have worked better as a series. This really would have worked better in shorter form. Like the movie is only like 90 something minutes, but it could easily have lost 20 to 30 of those minutes. There's not enough there to sustain it. There's not as much music as you'd want there to be. But then again, when there is music, it's just kind of generic. The whole thing really feels like it was kind of square adults making a film about or for the kids. So it has the social activism, the social unrest stuff, but it feels very sitcom-y. It has the music, but the music feels pretty square for 1970. It's just, the whole thing doesn't feel, not that the Monkees felt authentic, but that show was really done by people who were tapped into the youth culture, they were fairly young, most of the people working on the show, and it had that feel to it. And the movie they made, we'll get into this, movies about rock and roll bands have never been very good. Movies that are about fake rock and roll bands have never been very good. Movies starring rock and roll bands, for the most part, aside from the Beatle movies and Head, which I love, which was not a success in its day because it was way too weird and out there. It was a avant-garde Head movie that was not what Monkey fans wanted, and people who were into avant-garde Head movies did not want to watch a Monkees movie, so it took a couple generations for people to say, oh no, wait, this is a really cool thing, and it really works really well for what it is, and it's an astounding time capsule. Toomorrow isn't that, really. It's very straight, it's very square, it's very well made for what it is. You do get scenes of, London area from 1969, 1970, which are a nice time capsule. The clothes are fabulous. The score is pretty darn good, really, for what it is. And you get to see the Roundhouse, London, in London, which is still exists, a very famous place where bands played back then. So you get to see that, the exterior, the interior of that, which is pretty cool. But for the movie itself, it's kind of a dud, unfortunately, which is one of those things where you read about it on paper and you're like, why have I never heard of this? Or you see a newly created trailer for this and you're like, this looks fabulous. Why have I never heard of this? Well, there's almost always a reason why you haven't heard of it, and it's usually because it's really not very good. That all being said, the extras are really cool on this. I finished watching this like last night, and the Andrew Sandoval commentary is great. It's really cool. It talks about the production of the movie, how the movie came to be, what he draws from a lot of contemporary journalism about it, like what was being said in the music papers about how the group was formed before the movie came out, and what the plans for the group were. How I believe it was the drummer who you see in the movie actually left the group before the movie came out, and they hired somebody to replace him who was ready to do public appearances and do live shows. I guess they did do a live show once at the Roundhouse in London. They put out a couple singles that didn't really go anywhere. Funny enough, I did come across the LP soundtrack couple months ago, and I didn't buy it because I hadn't seen the movie. I'm like, well, I don't know if I'm going to like the music. Ultimately, I didn't like the music, so I probably made the right choice on that one. But it's very interesting. It's one in a long line of rock movies that were made by people who were not hip enough to really make a good rock movie in the day. A lot of the times, those rock movies would fail, whether it was the Herman's Hermits movie or the Spencer Davis Group movie or whatever. The problem is or the Los Bravos movies, which the second one of which is really fun. Unfortunately, it's not available anywhere in English. I wish Deaf Crocodile would pick up the Los Bravos movies because the music in it is fabulous. And especially the second one, whose name I can't remember because it's in Spanish, it feels like a feature-length Monkees episode. It's got a lot of energy, a lot of color. It looks really fun. It just has no English subtitles on the Spanish Blu-ray that I have. Those movies always failed because the bands weren't actors for the most part, so you had to surround them with a lot of middle-aged or older character actors, and that's not really what youth want to see. So whether it was Herman's Hermits or whoever, really just the Beatle movies are the ones that worked. So extras on this, I ramble. Because it's a topic I'm really interested in. I really wanted to like this movie. I'm probably going to keep this disc anyway because of just it's very interesting, and maybe with a different mindset, and someday I might want to watch it. Also interesting, in this movie, 1970, Olivia Newton-John is playing a college student. 8 years later, in Greece, Olivia Newton-John is playing a high school student. So, Musical Humanitarianism Through the Stars is a 12-minute visual essay by film critic Celeste de la Cabra, which is interesting. The Nose Has It is fun. It's 1942 World War II British propaganda, or public information film about the spreading of germs, the danger of spreading of germs, and how that will hurt the war effort. It's written and directed by Val Guest, and stars British comedian Arthur Askey. And if you're a fan like I am of The Fast Show, there was a running gag on that with Paul Whitehouse called The Arthur Atkinson Story. And to me, seeing Arthur Askey makes me realize that Arthur Atkinson is very much based on Arthur Askey, with the kooky voice, the round glasses, and the catchphrases being thrown out all the time from the music hall. You get a Val Guest interview from 1998 that is 65 minutes long. It was a talk done after a screening, or a talk done in public with The Guardian, sponsored by The Guardian newspaper. And it's Val Guest and his ex-wife, and apparently Roy Ward Baker or Freddie Francis, one of the guys, was in the audience, but they don't bring him up on stage. But it's an hour and 5 minutes of him talking about his career. It's very interesting. It was well done for what it is. It's from 98. It's 4:3 standard def video. Looks like it wasn't really intended for broadcast, but for historical or archival purposes, but it works just fine. Looks and sounds good. Then you have If I Could Turn You On from 1969. This is a 13-minute black and white 4:3 featurette. And the notes say, stark experimental film documenting an avant-garde performance at the Camden Roundhouse, one of the locations used in Toomorrow. It's avant-garde living theater. With your tolerance for that may vary, but it shows you the kind of thing that went on roughly around the time of the production of this film at the Roundhouse, where the film culminates. And you get a 1988 Val Guest audio interview discussing Toomorrow, which is very good. It's 10 minutes, and it is heavily illustrated with production photos and promotional photos and things like that. So it's not just one still. It's not just clips from the movie or stills taken from the film you just watched. It's actually a lot of supporting visual material. So packaging-wise, we have this is the cover, which is not the most dynamic cover. You open it up and you get that again, and you get a shot of them in their rear projected, groovy, flower painted station wagon that they travel from gig to gig in, the 2 gigs you see them in. And it was restored by BFI, and Deaf Crocodile has been doing some good stuff. I'd love to see more BFI releases released in this country, because a lot of them tend to just be region B and not come over here because they're not things that are terribly well known in this country. But I've always been a fan of UK culture and music and movies and TV and all that, and the more of that we can get here without having to buy other region import discs, the better. So available now on Blu-ray from Deaf Crocodile. Region A is the Olivia Newton-John starring rock musical sadly failure, Toomorrow.